Remember 2006? Everyone was wearing bootcut jeans, Shrek the Third was considered watchable, and Pixar gave us Cars, a heartwarming animated film about friendship, racing, and a dystopian alternate reality where humans never existed but infrastructure somehow still does. So naturally, there was a video game. Well, several video games. Depending on what console you had, you either got a decent open-world racer, or a half-baked tech demo where Lightning McQueen controls like a shopping cart with a faulty wheel. Developed by Rainbow Studios, the people who made MX vs. ATV, Cars, the video game, tried to squeeze as much fuel out of Pixar's big summer IP as humanly possible. And honestly, it sold terrifyingly well. Cars was a licensed title that somehow wasn't awful, but still manages to make you question if you're actually having fun, or if you're just vibing in a low-poly desert with a Larry the Cable Guy soundboard. Before Cars was pixelated and dropped onto every console known to man, THQ was already knee-deep in the licensed game business, turning out SpongeBob, Nickelodeon, and WWE titles like they were printing money, which technically they were. So when Pixar's newest merch machine rolled off the lot, THQ did what THQ did best, secured the rights, called in Rainbow Studios, and said, "Make it drive." At the time, Rainbow was mostly known for off-road racing titles like the MX vs. ATV series. So they were halfway there. Dirt, vehicles, unrealistic physics, check, check, and check. Narrative cohesion? That wasn't the priority. The result was Cars, a game that technically acts as a sequel to the movie, picking up right after the events of the film and answering all of your burning questions like, what if Lightning McQueen became a local racing celebrity? What if Mater never stopped talking? And what if driving in circles counted as meaningful character growth? Multiple versions were developed simultaneously. Rainbow Studios handled the main console releases, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and eventually Xbox 360. Locomotive Games made the PSP version, Beenox got to develop the PC version, and the DS and GBA releases were, well, they were interpretations. To THQ's credit, they did manage to convince much of the original voice cast to show up. Owen Wilson, Bonnie Hunt, Larry the Cable Guy, all lending their talents to a script that was certainly words. And of course, like any good tie-in game, it hit shelves the same day as the film, June 6th, 2006. Because what's a movie release without an adjacent product for your grandma to buy you instead of the DVD? On paper, Cars is a racing game. In practice, it's what happens when you give MX vs. ATV a Pixar skin and tell it to be kid-friendly. Set after the events of the film, the game continues Lightning McQueen's journey as he settles into small-town fame, by racing the same 5 people in increasingly redundant circuits across a shockingly vast desert. The core structure is pretty simple. Drive around Radiator Springs and its surrounding off-brand Grand Canyon zones. Unlock races, complete challenges, and occasionally play minigames that feel like someone lost a bet during development. The game boasts an open world, though that's being generous. You can explore multiple regions: Radiator Springs, Ornament Valley, Tailfin Pass, and a place that's just desert. Again, but with a different rock formation. Each area has races and side missions, which all boil down to drive in a loop, beat a car, and listen to Mater say something vaguely threatening in a friendly tone.
You sure do, Mr. Mr. Ginnell.
Ginnell? Mater, what's a ginnell?
It's your name backwards. Hello?
Mater, my name's not Litnig. You're not so good with the whole spelling thing, are you?
The driving itself is fine. Surprisingly smooth, in fact. There's drifting, boosting, jumps, and even a vague sense of momentum. You can feel Rainbow Studios' roots showing they knew how to make a vehicle move. And that's more than you can say for a lot of licensed games from 2006. But there are problems. The AI is aggressively rubber-banded, making every race feel like you're playing against psychic bumpers who politely let you win in the last 10 seconds. The mission variety is low. tracks can be hard to follow, and some tasks feel like filler designed to make sure the runtime barely justifies a $49.99 price tag. As for presentation, the visuals hold up okay, in a nostalgic mid-2000s kind of way. Radiator Springs looks like the movie if you squint hard enough and ignore the poppin'. Character models are decent, lighting is minimal, and the entire world has the energy of a tourist trap in the off-season. Still, the voice acting somehow elevates everything. Having the original cast say lines, even if they sound like they were recorded in a broom closet, adds just enough polish to make you forget that half the cutscenes are just cars blinking at each other. The music? Generic twangy loops that scream, "We had a budget and it ran out at guitars." To break up the monotony of drive fast, win race, repeat, Cars throws in a few mini-games. They range from mildly charming, to clearly padding the runtime, to I don't know why this exists but I've already committed. Tractor tipping, for example, is a stealth minigame. Yes, a stealth mission, in a racing game, about sentient cars. It's somehow both the slowest and loudest part of the game. Then there's Sarge's Boot Camp, which asks you to drive carefully, a bold ask from a game whose core appeal is ramming into fences at full speed. These minigames don't ruin the game per se, but they do raise the occasional eyebrow, usually followed by the question, was this in the movie? In a rare act of ambition, or madness, THQ decided Cars should be available on, well, everything. Consoles, handhelds, PC, hell, probably an Etch-a-Sketch if you ask nicely enough. And while they all shared the same box art, what you got varied wildly depending on what hardware was sitting in your living room. Let's start with the console versions. PS2, Xbox, GameCube, and later the Xbox 360 all got the real game. Full 3D open world, voice acting from the movie, and missions that almost felt like they belonged in a retail product. The 360 version looked slightly nicer, think fresh coat of paint on a used Corolla. It ran smoother, had better lighting, but it was still the same game underneath. Moving on to handhelds, where the phrase same game quickly stops applying. PSP, arguably the best of the portables, it tried to replicate the console version, but with a worse frame rate, reduced draw distance, and that lovely washed out look that made everything feel like a flashback. With the Nintendo DS, while technically 3D, it controls like you're steering through a bowl of oatmeal. It also included minigames that weren't in any other version, which sounds exciting until you play them. And the Game Boy Advance, a top-down isometric racer. It functions, and that is the nicest thing that you can say about it. You could argue that they were each tailored to their platforms, or you could say THQ just crammed the word cars onto as many cartridges or discs as possible and hoped that no one would notice. Either way, the experience ranged from reasonably playable to what did this game do to deserve this? You might be wondering, wait, if this game takes place after the movie, does that mean it's canon? Great question. Short answer, no one cares. The long answer, we're talking about a universe where cars have dentists, hotel lobbies, and apparently court systems. Logic left the building when the windshield eyes showed up. The game does expand the world in a way that only a mid-budget tie-in can. There are new characters, new races, and even an ongoing rivalry with Chick Hicks, who is still mad about getting second place in a fictional event. So if you're looking for answers to the deeper lore questions like where all the car babies come from, this game remains proudly unhelpful. Sorry, MatPat. Like any respectable mid-2000s licensed game, Cars rewards your dedication with bonus content, because nothing says thanks for playing like 2.4DP storyboard sketches. There's a whole gallery of concept art, which is nice if you've ever wanted to see Lightning McQueen drawn with a variety of colorful decals. And for the real lore scholars, there are deleted scenes, all of which feel like some sort of soul-sucking analog horror.
Hey, Mater.
Ain't you gonna say hi to Bessie, too?
Hello, Bessie. How's it going?
You want to take her out for a drive? You know, it's been a while.
Actually, it hasn't. I had a dream about Bessie just last night, in fact.
Ooh. Was it a good one?
Well, it was weird, considering the roads I was pulling her on.
Think of them as the game's equivalent of DVD extras, only much less insightful with more awkward pacing. It's charming, in a low-effort, bonus disc kind of way. Not essential, not interactive, but it is there, and in tie-in game land, that counts for something. Against all odds, and several design choices, Cars did well, like really well. It sold over 8 million copies worldwide, making it one of THQ's biggest hits, which says a lot about the power of brand recognition, and maybe not a whole lot about the standards of 2006 parents. Critics were lukewarm, which is critic speak for it functions and we're not mad about it. Its most consistent compliment? It's not terrible. And in the world of licensed games, that's honestly a glowing endorsement. Parents were happy, kids were happy, THQ was very happy, and if nothing else, Cars proved that slapping a beloved Pixar IP onto a competent racing engine could move serious units. It also proved that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just make sure it turns, doesn't crash too often, and says Ka-chow every now and then. Looking back, Cars isn't some forgotten masterpiece. It didn't innovate, it didn't redefine a genre, but for a licensed game that came out on the same day as the movie, it managed to do the unthinkable, not be a complete disaster. The open world was ambitious for a kids racing game in 2006, the controls were decent, the voice acting elevated the bare-bones script, and the missions, while repetitive, were just engaging enough to justify a weekend rental, or a long car trip if you had the PSP. Sure, it's repetitive. Yes, the AI cheats, and no, it probably didn't need that many filler missions where Luigi asks you to find lost tires or whatever. But it also works. It feels like a real game. And that alone separates it from half of its licensed peers. In a sea of cynical cash grabs and barely playable movie tie-ins, Cars quietly coasted into the category of surprisingly okay. Not great, not bad, just fine. And sometimes, fine is a high score, especially in this genre. So if you ever find yourself nostalgic for the golden age of tie-in games, or just wanted to hear Owen Wilson deliver lines like he's 80% committed, Cars is sitting on the shelf somewhere, probably still with the sticker from Blockbuster. And that's Cars, a game that somehow skidded across the finish line in one piece. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Pixar's most aggressively average racing sim, feel free to hit like, or don't. I'm not your crew chief.